Welcome back to the Post Peak podcast. It's the middle part of January when we're recording this. The roads are salty and it's very, very cold. So we thought we'd talk to you today about winter motoring, car prep, etc., etc.
I was going to say it's freezing out there today. It's been really, really cold where I am. We had snow earlier this week as well, so we're in the midst of it at the moment. How was your weekend, James? I noticed that you went over to the Bicester Heritage for the scramble.
I did very last minute. I didn't actually have a ticket, but I realised that my other plans for Sunday got cancelled. So I put out a speculative message and managed to get a ticket for me and my son to go along the night before from some friends that had dropped out. So yeah, I went along. Um, I hadn't been to one in January for a couple of years, so it was interesting to see how things have moved on. It was still sold out, so it was still very busy, and there was still a lot of very cool cars there. I would say there was probably less cars on display than you get in the spring and autumn meets. But nonetheless, what struck me and what I was surprised about was the fact that there were so many people there in hypercars, even that were braving the elements and the salty roads to go and attend the scramble. So there was um, there was a Bugatti Veyron there that had driven there, covered in salt. Same with a Koenigsegg. So yeah, those two cars had come on their own steam, which as someone who's got like a 50, 60 grand Porsche that has decided to not drive it over winter and keep it garaged, I was pretty surprised and questioning my decisions when I saw some guy turn up in a Bugatti Veyron, and I was like, oh, maybe I should have just driven it all through the winter. Maybe it's not that bad.
What do you think they do in terms of mate? Do you think they're sandblasted the second they get home by a detailing company, or do you think they just leave them out and they drive them? They're not really that fussed. How do
I
you
don't
think
know.
people treat those cars?
I'd love to know. I would imagine cars like that are probably kept in winter storage, right? So my assumption is that the owners of those cars are willing to do something like that because they know they'll drop it back at the storage place, and probably today those cars will be jacked up and fully cleaned underneath and the salt washed off, etc. And they've probably got coats of Lano guard on them, etc. So that's what I'd like to think anyway. But maybe they just don't care and they're only planning on owning the car for a year and they're just like, sod it, I'm going to use it, which I also rate as well. So um,
Serious money. That's another level, right? If you can daily a Veyron in this weather, we're
yeah,
obviously clearly in the wrong game, right? That's where
yeah.
we're missing a trick there.
I mean, there was lots of other cool cars there though, and other cool cars that are old and rare and like different and unique that were still driving there. There was I came in behind a like R Reg Vauxhall Vectra GSI, which you never see those on the road anymore. And obviously the guy's driven there on his own steam. So yeah, it was great to see so many cool cars still being kind of driven, even though the roads were like very salty um, there and back. So
It's great these events go on as well. They're so accessible, right? I'm just such a fair weather person. When it comes to sport, football, golf, everything in my life that depends on being outside, I almost wait until the sun comes up before I get too involved in a lot of that stuff. It's even
yeah,
like the driving tours and all the rest of it. They almost don't sort of the season for me doesn't really kick off until end of March, start of April, once the salt lifts off the roads and the weather gets a little bit less cold.
yeah. The
um,
I guess the only point on the other side of that, and I've heard a few people mention this as well. Like I know that Neil Clifford mentioned it on the Chris Harris podcast recently, saying like, I hate January. I don't really like Christmas, and I really hate January, and I'm miserable. And the only thing that I've got to look forward to is the fact that the scramble's being hosted. So, and I know my friend Joe Achilles is also hosting a meet next week because it's the day before Blue Monday, which is a day that's marked as the most depressive day or whatever of the year. And I think it's great that these events continue to go on throughout the year for people that use events like this as a mood lifter and a lifeline. So I'm very glad. I'm very glad it does happen. I'm glad that I went along. It was good. It got me out of the house, even though it was really cold. My son usually hates really cold, but he was a trooper, to be fair, and he had his picture taken with like 20 cars, so he was loving it, and people were loving the fact that he was loving it, and he was walking around going, "Dad, that's a Lambo, that's a Jag." look at all these Jags, this is awesome. And like bystanders were loving it, and they were getting out the way so he could have his photo taken with the cars. And yeah, it was really good. I mean, the crowd at the Scramble is probably the best crowd that I know about a car event. So if you've never been to a Scramble, the next one I think is on the 26th of April, and tickets should be going out. They should be out by the time we put this podcast out. So if you've never been before, I would say definitely give it a go, unless you're, of course, running the London Marathon, which is on the same day, which I'm not.
So I was going to ask, are you?
The
Because
only reason I know that is because I invited a friend of mine and he said, I can't, I'm running the London Marathon on that day. So that's why I know it's the same day.
I was going to say, and yeah, to your point, I've gone to quite a few of them myself, and taken my son with me on the last one I went to, which was probably back in the last summer. And some of the owners of these crazy cars were letting him just sit, and I was like, no, no, he's all right, he's got muddy shoes. And they were like, no, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Everyone was so nice, and yeah, he sat in a few tasty cars there, so that was good.
And
I
they
think
had
my
good stuff for kids. My son got his face painted and like by like a full
nice,
on makeup artist. Like he looked awesome. So
nice,
he
that's
liked it
good.
as well.
We're creating some amazing memories there, which is what this is all about, right? Which is great.
Exactly.
I think my weekend was a bit more tactical. Ended up doing a bit of car maintenance. I So talking about weather and winter, went to rescue my brother-in-law, sister-in-law's car, which had a flat battery. So it's typical this time of year,
Uh,
people's batteries running out. So lent them my trickle charger, got the car recovered, lent them my trickle charger, got that set up, hopefully recovered, restored their battery, and then just went round just doing everyone's. While I had it out, I was like, I'm going to go help some more people. The only person I haven't helped is myself, so I need to put one of our cars on there, which hasn't moved for a while, so that'll be good. And then also went car shopping. So I don't know if I shared this before, but my in-laws had their car crashed into the week before Christmas, so it's just really, really bad timing because obviously everyone downs tools, and
yeah.
insurance companies and recovery companies are a little bit slower and probably inundated because there's probably a lot of crashes this time of year with the weather and stuff. And I think that was, clearly it was parked up on a road, so there's nothing to do with them at all. And they came out, and there was obviously someone hanging out the back of their car. Um, and admitted full liability anyway. But when you think about the accident, it was a young kid, so I felt a bit sorry for him. He was all right, no one was hurt. But it was a case of just the fact that he'd rushed out, middle of winter, freezing degrees outside. The window was steamed. It wasn't frosted, but when a car's obviously damp inside, you obviously get that condensation. So
Mm.
the window hadn't cleared inside, and so on. And so, just jumped out into his mum's car, driven down the road, looking out the window and waiting for the blower to remove the fog on the screen, and just didn't see the car and smashed straight into the back of it at 30 miles an hour. So yeah, I've been out car shopping with them this weekend, and we're looking at probably a small SUV like a X3, X4, or maybe a GLC Mercedes,
Hmm.
something in that region for them to replace what they've got already. But yeah, so quite a car related maintenance tactical kind of weekend for me. Not as fancy as you going to a car show, but hopefully soon.
Yeah. I guess that points to the importance of car maintenance and being prepared to be on the roads, right? That guy probably wouldn't have crashed if he'd have spent an extra 5 minutes demisting the windows or whatever, or maybe in a slightly different scenario, he was on like old, worn budget tires and didn't quite account for the road conditions to crash into. That ended up him writing off his car, probably increasing his insurance premiums for a long time. So it is a serious topic, right? And it does have consequences if you get it wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, I put my hands up, right? I've been there. I've been in those situations where perhaps I've driven in a car where I was in a rush, I was hasty, I was probably naive and young, and maybe not waited for the whole windscreen to clear. But equally, like that was completely fogged, as in there was zero visibility. I think some of us will probably wait until we got a clear path of vision before we drive. But we've all been in those situations where we've
Mm.
almost taken a few more risks. But I think this time of year in particular, it's dark early. It gets dark at 3:30. I think my warning lights, I think most modern cars now come on, tell you there's ice on the road at like I think +3 degrees,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
what I think when ice starts to form. So it's interesting on the continent how they mandate winter tires, for example, be really interesting to see what your thoughts are here, and if perhaps we should have something here. I think the argument is that we don't get such heavy snow and heavy winters, such extremes, perhaps because we're an
Yeah.
island. But I do see some value in having winter tires on your car. What are your thoughts on kind of winter car maintenance and that topic?
I've done it before. So I've when I had my E91 that I've talked about before, I used to run Pirelli Sotta Zero tires on that in the winter. It was a rear wheel drive car, and it was it's a safe. I saw it more of like a safety blanket, where I felt more confident in my braking distances and in traction if the weather was particularly bad. But I probably had 2 years in a row where I'd swapped the winter tires onto the car, and then we hadn't really had any cold weather, like significantly cold. I mean, winter tires are meant to be effective at anything below 7 degrees C, more effective than a summer tire. Um, but I think our winters we've had a cold snap recently, but typically our winters feel a bit milder. And I think if you're in the south, there is a question mark on is there value for buying that set of tires. What I would say is I think it's easier and more valuable if you buy a set of rims that have the winter tires on, and then swapping them on and off is a lot easier. You're not changing the tires on your rims twice a year, which brings with it increased risk of damaging the rim, and I've had that problem as well recently. So if you are going to do it, I would say buy a winter set of wheels to also keep your summer wheels in nicer condition and less prone to salt corrosion, but also mainly just for ease of swapping them on and off. So I've never done that. If I do run winter tires in the future, which I'm not this winter, then that's probably what I'll do.
Mm. And we were talking about earlier, but I think a lot of the roads where I am, just outside of northwest London, are quite well gritted where I am. So that comes with pros and cons. You also could probably drive any car in the conditions around me. We haven't
Yeah,
had any major snow or any particular roads close to where I live that are unmanageable, I guess. So it's almost a case of when would I really need to lean on those tires? I don't really know based on where I live, but I suppose the more remote, the further out, further north and maybe west we go, maybe the more value that those type of tires can bring. And also, I'm not really going to be doing many drives or tours this time of year either.
yeah.
So I think if I was doing a tour, if I was in a car where I was maybe driving a bit faster, perhaps, then that would probably be my go-to first action to get a good set of winter tires and make sure
Yeah,
the
I also
car's
think
fully
if you're
prepped.
using your car commercially, like if you're a taxi driver or a
Mm,
delivery driver or something like that, I think winter tires probably should be mandatory. I know I use a driver for when I do airport runs for work, and he always runs winter tires on his car, mainly because it means that if there is a big cold snap, he's still able to get his customers where they need to go. So I think it should be mandatory for commercial vehicles where they're carrying out a business. I'm not sure that in the south of England, it should be mandatory. To be honest, based on my experience the last 10 years.
what other things do you like to do, or do you have a kind of winter prep regime that you go through with the cars that you have?
So I have done in the past. I haven't this year, but in the past, a friend of mine swore by Lano Guard, which is an underbody protection, chassis protection product that's like a spray that kind of sets underneath the car and protects it against salt, corrosion, etc. Yeah, so we jacked up the car, took off all the wheels, put it on axle stands, fully cleaned all of the wheel arches, undercarriage, and then coated it with Lano Guard. And that post, weirdly, because it was a bit different, that post on my Instagram got like crazy traction. My Instagram account's not particularly big, but yeah, that post alone got like really, really big traction. So it was interesting to see that it got so much engagement. I don't think enough people do that, to be honest. But the reason they don't do it is to do it at home is a massive faff. Like most people
Mm.
don't have trolley jacks. Almost anyone who's not a car person doesn't have axle stands. So for them they don't even clean their car. Usually they take it to the local car wash. So to ask someone to jack up their car, remove the wheels, coat it, like people just aren't going to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if less than 2% of cars in the UK have any form of underbody protection. I've only done it once, and I'm actually keen to do it again. I got a price from someone locally who does it, and he wanted 600 quid to do it, and I was like, that feels like a
I,
lot considering I did it end to end in like an hour and a half on my car. So
I was about to say that sounds like a great business opportunity, right? If you've got someone that's time poor, but maybe got a decent collection of cars that just need someone to come and prep for winter, then it
mm,
might be an opportunity for someone mobile, I guess. To There's probably those people out there that do that, but
yeah, offering winter
that's
protection.
interesting.
The only
Um,
other thing that I typically do try and do is I'll typically try and do a decent clean decontamination and layer of wax on the paint, and I'll usually do that in sort of mid October, November time, and then I'll do it again like in spring or so, where I'll do like a polish and put a decent coat of wax on it just for additional protection, and also for making the car easier to clean during the winter months where it gets dirty a lot quicker. So that's the only other thing. What about you?
Not a lot. I think because I'm quite time poor with all the kids, and weekends are just consumed by either kids clubs and homework and all kind of
Yeah,
sorts of stuff like that. It's quite difficult to kind of squeeze that in when the car's available. And then during the week, it's almost like a taxi, especially the family car. It's almost on the road constantly, so it's really difficult to do a lot of that myself.
yeah,
But I do get a lot of satisfaction from doing it, and you know some of the basic stuff. I know it sounds really basic, but it's almost like the battery charging, the coolants, just giving it a quick, look over from oils, and maybe taking it for a drive to make sure everything is what it is. I used to have one of those machines you could plug it in and just read any faults and stuff like that. So sometimes they can be quite useful. But yeah,
yeah,
very very little to be honest at the moment. But I think that's because I don't necessarily have um, a kind of a toy. I've almost got those kind of more practical daily cars at the moment, but maybe
yeah,
when a toy comes along, that'll be a bit different. Yeah, I garaged to the Porsche I had and the BMW, the M3 that I had. Both were either garaged or covered for the majority of the kind of winter months anyway. So, and we're both on trickle chargers. So, again, let's see what happens this year with the plans that I've got to get something a bit more fancy. But for now, yeah, very little in that respect, to be honest with you.
yeah. Yeah. Would you pay for it if there was a service that you knew about that someone said to you, I can come to your house and prepare your car for winter, do all the underbody, prep it. Would you pay, say, 250 quid for that?
Yeah, I definitely would. Yeah, especially on the range because it's probably going to be completely rotten in a few years' time anyway. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would, and I think it just needs to be a bit more accessible because I almost feel like you need to be part of a group, or people don't necessarily advertise in the places that I would look at. But I suppose
Yeah.
if you had, I think there was a startup a while ago. I don't know where it's gone, but it was called, I think, Drop or Drip, that used to do kind of more flexible car servicing. But it almost
Mm,
needs something like that, where it's more like an Uber platform for a business where you could kind of pick and choose the exact time. You knew who was coming. You could block the car in, and
yeah.
you could have a bronze, silver, gold service depending on your budget and your time and everything else and the type of car it was. You
Yeah.
almost want something like that you can pick from that would make it super easy. It could be done on your driveway. You don't even have to be in, and you almost don't want the it's the time problem that we probably have as dads and stuff like that to do a lot of this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But
Okay. Well, we talked about maintenance. What about options and what you look for in a winter car? I've obviously gone through a process recently of picking a winter car. On reflection, I think I've got most of it right, but maybe not all of it. But I can cover that in a moment. Like what if you were out there specifically buying a car to get through the winter, like quite a lot of people do, what would be your kind of must-haves that you would want to tick?
I got some practice this weekend with obviously just popping into BMW and Mercedes to have a look at
Yeah.
the stock that they've got. And it was funny because my in-laws was almost asking me, what are you looking for in a car? And I think my non-negotiables for maybe a large family car, without getting into the winter topic too much, because I kind of oversaw that a little bit. I was almost going, I want panoramic roof and I want a really good sound system, because for me they are, in a big car, they're probably the two options that I would almost want as a non-negotiable before looking at all the others.
Yeah.
And then at the other end of the spectrum, which probably plays more into like the winter, the comfort, the convenience, having heated steering wheel, heated seats, heated windscreen, and the Q. So we've obviously got a Q7 as our main family car because we've got a herd of 4 children,
Yeah.
and you know that car doesn't have a heated steering wheel and a heated windscreen. It does have heated seats, to be fair, but it takes a long time for the windscreen to clear. So if you're on a school run and you just need to get off, you're
Yeah.
almost waiting 5 minutes, or you have to get the scraper out, but you're almost waiting five plus minutes for the windscreen to defog and clear itself. Whereas the Range Rover's got a heated screen, and within 30 seconds, you can kind of you're off.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah,
So
I've got
so
the
I think
heated screen on my Jag, and it does make a massive difference. I don't have the combination of all three on any one of my cars though. So I have a heated steering wheel in the BMW, but I don't have a heated screen in that one. So
And,
yeah, I don't have
and I
all
was going to
three.
say, those creature comforts this time of year are absolutely priceless. So I've almost said to them, like, based on what you look for, the fact that they don't karaoke, car karaoke in their car like I do, and like to sing in, like listen to loud music and all the rest of it, and not necessarily bothered about passengers in the back because they don't typically take a lot of passengers in their car.
Mm,
They're almost going after those kind of creature comforts to say they are their non-negotiables. They want those winter packs. They want maybe more comfortable tires. They don't want the low-profile rims, and they want heated steering wheel, heated windscreen, and all the rest of it because it's this time of year that you probably use it. And let's be honest, in the UK, we're probably in this time of year at least 3 or 4 months of the year we spend running to our cars and trying to warm up, don't we? And then we kind of forget about it. You go through kind of the spring, and then winter's gone. It feels like a long lost memory, and then you almost forget that you need those kind of
yeah,
features and
exactly.
functions as part of your car. Really. How about you? Is there any other elements that you're looking for?
Well, the one that I would love, but doesn't seem to be. I was doing some research on this earlier because I knew we were going to talk about this, and I was looking into remote start because for me, remote start is the ultimate. Like you don't have to go outside twice. Uh, you start the car, worry about the fact that it's running while it's unlocked, etc., etc. Someone's stealing the car. You're not insured if that's the case. I know that on electric cars and on some hybrids, plug-in hybrids, they do offer remote start. But I was looking into it some more, and I know that BMW, for example, they don't offer remote start because apparently it's against the UK law to have a car on the public highway that's running without the driver being inside. So they've disabled it on UK cars, but it does work, for example, in the US. So on my 2022 3 Series, I can start a ventilation program within the car to move some air around, but I can't start the engine to actually heat it up or run any of the heated functions. But I know, for example, a friend of mine's got a Tesla, and that works perfectly because I think maybe there's some different rules or something about the fact that it's not running, but you can switch on all of those functions remotely with it being an EV car and coming off the battery instead of there's no engine. So that is one area where I think EVs definitely have the upper hand because remote start for me is a really nice feature just to get in the car and it's already all warm and de-ice and stuff.
Do you think it's an environmental thing as well? Because I mean, you could get people moaning that you're not driving. I've had it before where
Mm.
someone's just knocked on the window, and I've been in a car park and the car's been on.
Yeah, and they're like, "Why are you
Sorry,
running
can
the engine?" So that did come up in the research I did this morning as well. There's an element from an EU perspective where they don't like cars running without people being in them. The other factor is many newer cars. It's stated and advised against letting the car just sit idling. So it's not recommended. For example, if you're storing your car over winter and you think, "Oh, I'll run it once every 3 weeks or whatever, get it up to temperature and not drive it." For many modern cars, that is actually not good for the engine, and you shouldn't do it. It's better to just not run it at all. So there's also an argument to say, yeah, you do have to de-ice a car so that you don't end up like the person that crashed into your parents, but you want to leave your car idling for as little time as possible, particularly when the engine's already cold. So
that's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's funny. I'm getting personal experience, right? I've got a neighbour who's got a really nice Audi R8, the V10,
mm,
and he has put a ridiculous exhaust system on it, which sounds incredible to me, but I don't think the road appreciate cars the same way I do, right? So
Of
he
course.
starts it up. This guy starts it up at about 7 a.m. Hi, if you're on here. Thanks for listening. Starts up at sort of 7 a.m. and immediately just reverses it and is off, because I think he's just so mindful, so conscious that, you know, he's
Yeah.
waking up the whole neighborhood with this exhaust system on it. And I know, I almost think maybe that's a good thing for the car. I mean, he, you know, fair play, he dailies the R8, which I love, and it sounds epic. And it does wake our kids up if they're still asleep. Not that they probably sleep past 7 o'clock, so it's not an issue, but it's very, very loud and he's off. But I mean, maybe that's almost good for that car to keep to just literally in reverse, gone, and you know he hasn't even idled; he's just off.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to drive these new
That's the way
cars,
the
because
manufacturer advises it, obviously assuming you can see.
yeah, I'll be keen to get people's opinion actually in the comments of like, is that the right thing to do? Do people leave their cars running for a while, maybe even for a few minutes before they set off? I typically do. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I probably get in my car, almost wait for it. The I guess if you've got like a cold start mode in some of these cars, I almost wait for the revs to sort of dip down before I start driving off. But maybe that's a bad thing. I'm not an
Hmm.
expert in this area, but I'd love to get people's opinions and advice on whether other people do that or not.
Yeah. So
I'm almost
we're at 26 minutes. We as we mentioned before, we're intentionally trying to keep these short, so that they're consumable for people that are maybe on a commute or otherwise. So we will still finish this episode as we always do, talking about peak car, and obviously today it makes sense to cover peak winter car. What we thought we'd do today is do some quick fire, not really go into loads of reasons why, because we want to keep it short, but to cover it at the 5 grand, 10 grand, and 20 grand level right now. What is a really good winter car to buy at those levels? So Jack, do you want to go through what your picks are?
here's my picks. I'd be keen to get your view, and then we can ask your ones. But for mine, my 5K, did a bit of research today very quickly and found a 2009 Subaru Impreza WRX. It isn't an STI; it's the hatchback shape, so it's the less loved version of that. But it's a four-wheel drive, 2.5 liter turbo, and for 5 grand, it done just shy of 100,000 miles. I was like, that's an interesting buy. If you want a car that's gonna hopefully get you everywhere for 5K, it's a lot of car for the money.
Yeah,
In the 10K bracket, I'd probably go for maybe the pre-facelift S3 2009, just because I like that shape. And again, that's quattro, a manual box. I quite like how compact those cars were before the later generations. So I'd probably go for that. And again, 10K would probably get you a really nice example of that.
yeah,
Maybe
sure.
you could facelift, you could go to the 2013 model, but then you'd probably get a much higher miles, more ropier one, perhaps at that level. And then probably for like the early 20s, I wouldn't say it's a sub 20, I'd say it's probably 23, 24K bracket, just about. If you could stretch to that, would be a GR Yaris, which for me would be ultimate winter car, because pretty much there got a rally setup, right? I've got an Impreza, I've got an S3, I've got a GR Yaris, depending on the budget. But I think you'd have so much fun in the winter once it snows in any of those cars. But I always liked the Yaris since they came out. And I haven't had a go in one. I've not even sat in one, but I'd love
Yeah.
to take one for a ride. What about you?
My
What's yours look like?
my good friend Ash Horton has just moved back to his native land of New Zealand, sadly, because I've lost a very good friend in him moving. But what he has done is gone from having an M2 for the last couple of years to buying a GR Yaris. And he says it's absolutely awesome. Like he absolutely loves that car, and I very much trust his opinion. So yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. I mean, little bit small. I think you'd struggle with your 4 kids in a GR Yaris, maybe. Because another friend of mine had one, and I know his son fitted in it, but the back of them is quite tight. But in terms of a kind of manual 4 wheel drive pocket rocket, yeah, they seem to have it all going on. There's a couple of mods that you can do to those to make them better. Like you can reduce apparently the seat height in them is a bit high, so you can buy a mod to have the seat sit lower down for a better driving position. Um, but yeah, good shout.
I love the yaw control on that as well. The fact that you can almost turn it into like a rear bias rally car, and it can
Mm.
almost drift, I'd imagine as well. So that'd be a lot of fun this time of year for sure. So if anyone wants to lend me one, I'd love to have a go. But what about you, James?
I'm I'm more of the old man brigade. I think when it comes to old cars, I like I like the idea of being in a kind of cosseting environment, warm, maybe like classic FM playing on the radio, driving gloves. I don't know why. I think I've been watching too much of It's Joel. There's a guy on YouTube called It's Joel, and he's of that opinion as well, despite probably being younger than me. So that was partly why I bought my Jag, which is an XFS 2009. I picked that up for 4.5 grand. The only thing that that car doesn't have, which for me wouldn't make it like peak winter at 5k, is its rear wheel drive. So what I was looking at also was Audi A8s. 5 grand is a little bit challenging for an Audi A8, but you can get them. I was looking at one for 6, which was up for a while, so I would have chanced my arm at 5. Um, but yeah, an Audi A8 Quattro, super comfortable, um, would be my choice at that price. At 10, I've mentioned this car before, but again, I think it's what I would pick at 10 grand, which is an L322 Range Rover. Um, I really have a soft spot for that car. I know that the guy that owns Starnagloss, Cav, he's recently got one and he keeps posting about it and the fact it's amazing and, you know, brilliant winter car. So I would go for an L322, and I know that at 10 grand you can get a pretty decent one, like probably a Westminster, um, definitely one of the facelifted ones. So yeah, I'd probably go for that. And then 20 grand, I would go back to my roots and probably pick a 335D X Drive Touring, which in the F31 shape you can get a really good one for 18 to 20 grand. Those cars are just awesome as winter cars. If you stuck a pair of winter tires on that, you can
Mm.
pretty much go anywhere with bags of torque, 4 wheel drive, get the kids and the dog in, comfortable, as you talked about with pan roof, heated steering wheel. The only thing it wouldn't have is a heated front screen, but I think for that you have to be either Ford or Jaguar Land Rover because of the patents. So yeah, 335 DX Drive Touring for me at 20.
Good choice, solid choice there. I like the Range Rover in the middle of that as well.
Yeah.
Something, something about being in one of those this time of year. It's just quite comforting. So, good choices. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap it there. Hopefully, keep warm, everyone, and we'll see you for our next one very soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.